Hey guys, BBI here. I want to stop and say thanks for tuning in and checking out whatever the video is about that's about ready to come up next. If you could take a minute and hit subscribe, I'd greatly appreciate it. And if you enjoy what you've seen here, make sure to hit the like button. We'd greatly appreciate your support. Anyhow, guys, all that aside, let's get on with the show. See if we can get the shot on the phone not ring. As soon as I'm done doing this, I've got to go and do at least 22 return phone calls. Man. Gentlemen, what we have going on here, this is the classic, venerable Palomar 300A white-faced chrome top. Every sea beer's mainstay for decades. So the reason that you and I are standing here together, and we're looking at this together, is because of one Facebook comment last night. You guys are going to love this. So I get this text from this guy. I don't know who he is. Don't know him from Adam. I just get this text, and it says, I have a Varmint 1000. When I key it up, should I tune it for the lowest SWR? Question mark. And I said, what? He goes, the knob on the back, should I tune it for lowest input or lowest SWR? Now my brain, being me, immediately think is like an amp builder, because that's what I am, or a repair guy, and answer the question with, yes! You adjust the knob on the back of the amplifier on a Varmint 1000 for your lowest input. See, I added that word in my brain, input SWR, and I also put it in text. For your lowest input SWR, all the knobs on the front, you adjust for maximum output power. Now, in communication, as we all know, there's two sides to every story. This gentleman, don't know him from Adam, come to find out, we've been friends on Facebook for a long time, took that information and disregarded the whole last portion of that sentence. All he heard was me agreeing with him. And I said, no, wait a minute, what exactly are you doing? In text. And he comes back to me and goes, I should tune this thing to the lowest SWR that I have. But then my output power falls way off. And I thought to myself, is he still talking about the input? And I said, yes, you should adjust your input knob for your lowest input reflect. On the back of the Varmint 1000, there's a little tiny capacitor that sticks in the back that you can adjust with a flat blade screwdriver. And with a watt meter from your radio to your amplifier, you can adjust the input SWR. And that's the signal coming into the amplifier. And its resonance going into the circuitry inside the amp. A lot of shops used to adjust that and then break the knob off the back. Because people like to turn knobs, and they would get back there and get to twisting on that knob, and they'd end up getting themselves a bunch of false power. Because they turn on that knob, the input reflect goes way up, and all of a sudden the output wattage goes up, but it's not real power. There's harmonics and garbage and all kinds of weird stuff that takes place there. So, on this particular amplifier, the input tune is on the inside, where you can't mess with it unless you take the tin off. So I let that go amongst the, I think, 80 something different text conversations I had yesterday and about 70 phone calls. Well, I came out here at 9 o'clock in the morning, and about 10 o'clock at night, I decided I'm going to let myself look at Facebook, because Facebook is so depressing these days. It's political ad, coronavirus, death, sadness, oh, and Joe Exotic. No shit. So I go, and this guy literally mentions me by name. He goes into a group of his peers and he says, he started a thread where he's asking to learn how to tune his sweep tube amplifier. He just wants to use his sweep tube amplifier. Now, all he heard out of that entire conversation that we had was that he needs to adjust his amp for his lowest SWR. Everything that was said is he's just thinking lowest SWR. People have a really hard time understanding that you have an input SWR in an amplifier and then your SWR on the output, which is your antenna. So I go thumbing through this thread because he mentioned me by name, and the last comment on the thread is him saying, well, I called Luke Miller and he says that I need to adjust my amplifier for the lowest SWR. Does that sound right to all of you guys? He heard what he wanted to hear. I heard what I wanted to hear. So at the end of the day, I told him, I said, dude, just call me tomorrow. I'll sit. And yesterday, I did this 2 times yesterday. I took 40 minutes per phone call because I want to see people be successful. And I sat down with these guys and explained to them step by step how to do a very basic tune on a sweep tube amplifier. We're going to do that here today. So let's go inside the box. Let's take a quick little tour for those guys that are going to actually Google this in the future and say, oh, okay, the first portion of this video is not going to make any sense to you. This portion from here on is where we're going to get serious for a minute. This is the inside of a 300A. Okay, it's the inside of this particular 300A. This is your output network right here. Tune, load, or in some amplifiers it's referred to as plate, load, and then other places you'll have tune and antenna. These 2 knobs. Okay, this is your band switch. Hokey at best. I actually tried to run one of these one time on the other bands, and it did work, but it worked horribly. We're just going to go within the 10-meter position. Okay? Okay. Just tongue-in-cheek, we're going to do the 10-meter position. Now, there's a whole lot more minutia to tuning a tube amplifier than what I'm going to show you here today. There's 2 competing theories of thought. There's some guys in the south and some guys in the east and a few dudes in the north and a few dudes down way down there in along the border that believe that you should take and jam as much wattage into this amplifier as you can, tune up for maximum dead key, and then back your dead key down and then run it. And then the other school of thought, the one that I actually believe in because of measured mathematics, you tune for maximum peak envelope power, otherwise your maximum resonance, to bring the circuitry the most in resonance with the frequency that you're operating. This is very simple, and once we walk you through this, it's going to make perfect sense. This tuner here matches the signal coming from the tubes. Okay, so this circuit here, which is for frequency, gets matched with this to the tubes. So the tubes produce the RF passes by the tuner, which is a coupling to ground, and because the circuit is resonant for frequency, with adding capacitance, we can take and drop our input signal down, drop down the resistance to the signal coming into the circuit, and it wants to fly forward, because RF will always pass for all the path of least resistance. This tuner, on the other hand, is what allows us to tune this circuit to the antenna. Okay? We have the same thing happening over here on the drive section. The input circuit also has a tuner on it, which allows us to adjust the RF coming into the amplifier so we can adjust it to be resonant to go into the tubes. But on this particular amp, and about 99% of all sweep tube amplifiers, we're going to have a separate tuner for our driver section. And this is very key. This driver section tuner is what allows us to match the output network of these tubes to the input network of these tubes. So the signal is going to come in, get matched, which on this amplifier we don't have to adjust, hit these 2 tubes, they're going to make power. The RF that comes out of here, we have to match it with capacitance to match the input of these 4 tubes. These 4 tubes rectify the signal that come from these 2 tubes, make more power, and the output power out the relay and out to your antenna. The amplifier makes no difference on what your SWR is at your antenna. None, 0, nothing. The only thing that makes a difference is the signal that you're putting into the antenna and the antenna's adjustment itself. The amplifier can only rectify power. It cannot affect your SWR at the antenna. It cannot. Now, what we do see happen from time to time, which is not relevant to this video whatsoever, is that you'll have a radio that is producing some weird little harmonic that's only like 1/8 of a watt, and it's off frequency that's not resonant with the antenna, and the amplifier will amplify that because it's signal going in. So what happens is people have like a 1.2 SWR on their antenna. They turn their amp on, all of a sudden they have an SWR of like 3.5. And when they go to modulate, it'll drop down. And it'll fall down to 0 because that, when you modulate the radio falls into resonance, quits producing that little harmonic, and the reflect drops. The SWR falls down. And so then everybody gets hyper-focused on the amplifier. 99% of the time it's never the amplifier. I've only seen maybe a dozen cases out of like 6,000 or 7,000 amplifiers plus to where it was an issue with the amplifier. And if you've managed to get your amplifier that far out of tune, hey man, Bob's your uncle. These things are pretty much idiot-free, little sweep tubers. The guys that built these in the 70s, they kind of knew what they were doing. They were trying to set everybody up for success. So this is our chrome lid just for documentation purposes. It's in great shape. And a little bit of dust on this side from when I laid it down here just a minute ago. But to find one of these in this good of condition, a little bit rare. Please note, this amplifier is for sale. I do not want it. It cannot fucking stay here. It's got to go some other place. Okay, let's get set up and let's talk about tuning. Okay, let's cover a little bit of health and safety before we move forward whatsoever. Do never operate, never ever will you shall ever never operate one of these with the lid off. There's enough voltage on the top of the tubes that it will kill you deader than dead. If you are dumb enough that you need to operate your amplifier without the lid on, you don't need to have the amplifier. Put the lid on, it's there for your safety. Two different levels. High voltage exposure and your own stupidity. Remember, this is one of the things that if you put your hands inside of it, it will kill you and it's going to hurt the entire time while you die. Period. If you're lucky, you'll be able to walk away from this with slight nerve damage and a lot of pain. All tube linears require a warm-up time. All. Some vary. 3500Z, instant on. 3CX, whatever, instant on. The 60Q6 8950 style amplifier that we're discussing here today, the sweep tubes, you gotta give it a couple minutes. You're waiting for the tubes to heat up on the inside of the amplifier, create the electrons that are allowing us to have magic schmoo that gets squirted out the coax so everybody can hear you say, I got down. Okay? So this requires you having a watt meter. And this needle on the front means very little to me. It is a very relative power meter, and in this amplifier it does work and it functions perfectly just like all the other functions in this amplifier. But it's there for relative power measurement. That's it. You're not going to use it for anything else than that. So always tell everybody, get yourself an external watt meter. And that's all we're going to pay attention to today, because that's all we're going to adjust here is bringing the circuitry inside this little metal box into resonance so it wants to travel out and make more going out the tube. Okay, so we're going to go into standby. I have a 50 watt slug in the peak envelope hole, 1000 here and a 5 watt slug here. Okay, so let's actually start into the tuning process now. We're going to turn the amplifier on. We're going to leave this in standby. We're going to flip this into low mode. This needs to be an AM, and our preamp switch, which all that is a little amplifier that allows you to pick up a little bit more receive. You'll find that it produces more static than it does anything else. 99% of the time people leave this off. Okay, we're going to leave this in standby. We're going to be in low range, AM, power on. Give it a couple minutes for it to warm up, 2-3 minutes. Now let's go ahead and set up our input drive. Like I said, 5 watt slug going forward here, 1000 watt slug here in average or bird, and then a 50 watt slug for us to start with. We're going to start in the low range, and we're going to slowly build upon that. So that's a 1/2 watt carrier. Now we're going to bring that up to about 2 watts. And remember, we're doing all of this with our mic gain off for a reason. Okay? The hardest you will ever be to the tubes ever in their entire life is right now. The tubes are going to try and produce power, but they have nowhere to go because their circuitry is not letting the RF come out. Click the thing into operate, and we're going to leave it in low. Remember, in low, the only thing we're focusing on is the final stage, these 4 tubes. If we don't have this right, we cannot turn the driver section on yet. We'll get there, have faith. So, with a 2-watt carrier going in, we're going to come over here and we're going to start matching our network by turning this knob. And see how it comes up and then it falls off? So it comes up, oh, fell off, so let's back that up a little bit. So with 2 watts going in, we're now making 15 watts of power just by turning this one knob, and you do things very slowly. Now we're going to adjust this knob, which is our load, which matches to our antenna. Now we're going to see a little bit more improvement. We've doubled our power. Now that we've gotten this a little bit more in resonance, we're going to come back over and we're going to adjust this knob again. Oh, it fell off. Fell off. And then we adjust this again. What we're adjusting is for maximum dead key. That's going to allow us to get our circuit about 80% within resonance. 80%. Okay? So now, high power. Oh, we're off the scale. Okay, so let's pull our 50-watt element out. And if you have a bird meter, this is where you'd be probably going to the, or a dosimeter, you're probably going to be going to your 200-watt scale. And we're starting with dead key, as always. So now we've increased the drive coming into the final section. We brought the 2-pill section, or the 2-tube section in line. So now we're dead keying 60 watts. And we're going to adjust here. There's 60. And about 90 watts worth of carrier. And then we're going to come back over to this knob again. And now we're back off the scale once again. So we're doing over 100 watt or 100 watt dead key with 2 whole watts of input power. So now we're in the 200 watt scale. When this needle here goes all the way to right, we're around 200 watts. Are we going to get there? I don't know. Let's find out. So we left off here. We're going to start here. Okay. You see how I keep going back and forth? So we're about 210 watts. Now guys, remember the ventilation inside this amplifier is not the greatest in the world. So, you don't want to sit here and keep this keyed down forever. Now we brought our driver section online and the only 2 knobs I've touched is this one and this one. And we are making 210 watts worth of power. That's 210 watts worth of power, because now we're on a 500 watt scale with 2 watts of drive going in. We still haven't touched the knob in the back. What I'm pointing out to you is you need to adjust your front knobs until you have these 2 producing the most dead key over here on this meter before you even think about reaching around here and adjusting these. On a varmint, the knob is over here in the corner. Sometimes there's 2, usually there's just one little knob down here in the corner. These 3 knobs are up in the upper right hand corner. Okay. So now we do the same thing. Twist this knob for maximum dead key. All right. Now that we got that established, we take our dead key, we're going to turn this down. Leaving this in high, now we're going to turn our mic gain up. Mic gain is up. This makes 20 watts worth of drive into this amplifier. And we're going to start here once again, matching to the outside world. That's a 500 watt element that we just put over in the corner. So we're making over 500 watts of power. Did you guys see the difference there? Between where our maximum dead key power was at versus peak power? Huge more schmoo. Okay. So now Save myself from looking like a moron, we'll put it down in 1x. So now this is a 1,000 watt element. And I got my elements backwards. Come here. Change this over personal preference. That's it. There's no 1,000 watt, 1,000 watt. Making about 600 watts of power. We haven't touched any of the other knobs. Let's adjust here. Making about 700 watts of power with 20 watts going in. 780 watts of power. Last thing we do is we adjust this knob in the back. So we can bring the output circuitry underneath driven mode into resonance with our final section. Because we don't have a grid meter of any kind on this amplifier, this is pretty much the only way that you can tune it. Now this amplifier is working exactly as it should. The tubes are probably somewhere between 90 and 100% on all of them. We're getting 800 watts of power out of a Palomar 300A, which is about typical. Please note where the tune and the load knobs are indicated. What I tell people to do is take a little piece of painter's tape and put it here, and another one here, and take a pen and put a little mark there, another little mark there, and you tune on channel. I found that it works best if you explain it to people that you tune the thing up for channel 20, channel 10, channel 20, and channel 30. If you want to go talk on 6, all you got to do is twist the knob, because you do have to adjust this after you change frequencies. You're going to have a low portion of the band, which is usually channel 1 through about channel 15. Then you're going to have the middle portion of the band, which is channel 15 through about channel 25. And then you're going to have the high portion of the band, which is about channel 25, channel 40. You're going to have to make an adjustment here and here. Not so much on the driver, but here and here as you go up and down in frequency, or otherwise up and down in channels. It's very important you do that. Because remember, if this tuner and this tuner are not resonant with the frequency that you're operating at, you might not see the power coming out of the meter, but the tubes are still making it, which means more heat, which means shorter life on the tubes. Gentlemen, this little Palomar 300A is for sale. With 20 watts of drive, it makes 800 watts of power. If you put a 45 watt radio into this, it will make over 1,000 watts. Peak. How long will it make it? I don't know. Little toaster ovens. They're like the little engines that could. They never get to go away. So if you're interested in this little thing, I'd probably take $400 for it. Plus the ride. It's not going to cost that much to ship. You can basically put this thing underneath your arm and walk away. It does have an auxiliary power supply that will come with it. It sits down underneath your bench. But guys, that's 101. That's how you tune a sweep tube amplifier. And now I have this video on record that I can send to people and say, here, watch this. This will get you basically running. There's a little bit more minutia to it than this. There's a whole lot more data I could have covered, and I could have stood here and talked for 3 hours. But for the guy that's got a sweep tube amplifier, he just wants to hook it up, make it run so he can get on the air and go chat with his buddies. This is your basic information right here. Gentlemen, I got to run. Hopefully this is helpful to some of you guys. I know it's going to be definitely helpful to the guy that was on Facebook last night, who turned out to be super cool, way nice. He went and took down a comment and apologized. He said he didn't realize that it would come across that way, and I apologize to you for being so short. I had been awake for 17 hours at that point. And sir, I hope you have a great day. Hopefully this helps you and helps somebody else down the road. Gentlemen, I will see you. Click, click, click.